May I remind you that trading is risky and not suitable for everyone. Your past performance, good or bad, is not necessarily indicative of future results. Please stay small, stay humble, focus on the long term, and never risk money you cannot afford to lose. Welcome to QuantBox Daily. Today is Thursday, October 27th, and interesting changes taking place on the fundamental side. So if you've gone through QuantBox today, you've had a look that you've got lots of neutrality across the pairs. Let's take a look at it. So euro dollar, first off, neutral. Breaking that down, you can see that COT data, seasonality, inflation, unemployment, interest rates, all coming through with -1. Retail sentiment is a positive. Trend reading is a positive, and GDP growth is a positive, giving us a total score of neutral. Interesting. Is this an indication of things to change? To go from bullish to bearish, we have to go to neutral first. Are we going to suddenly see that bearish go to bullish through neutrality? Or are we simply taking a breather in the market? We'll take a look at that now. So first off, in terms of the upcoming news, we've got some high and low tier news coming out of the Eurozone today. Some more low, medium, and high tier news. Quite a full slate today. Some high and low tier news. And of course, rather important today is an ECB rate decision. So the question is prices going up so it can come down, or is the market expecting some kind of change? At this point in time, we'll take a look at technicals. But what's interesting is at this very moment in time, we do not have a fundamental bias on the euro dollar. Maybe it's a moment to take a step back and just continue paying attention to any change that take place fundamentally. We have the same thing taking place on pound dollar as well. And you can see here, COT data -2, seasonality -1, inflation -1, unemployment is 0, and interest rates -1. So fundamentally, still bearish. However, retail sentiment is a positive, trend reading is a positive, and GDP growth is a positive. Has the market changed technically, though? We'll take a look at that in a moment. Looking at pound news, we've got some medium tier news coming out of the UK today. We've got some high tier news coming out of the US later on. Some more high tier news coming out of the States later on, and some medium tier news coming out of the States later on. So quite a lot of news today. Pay attention to that. USD CAD still coming through with a buy. Okay. Aussie USD still coming, is now suddenly sitting at neutral. Okay. You can see here, COT data -2, retail sentiment is a positive, seasonality -1, trend reading -1, GDP growth 1, inflation 1, interest rates -1. Pay attention to those changes. We'll take a look at Aussie USD in a moment. New Zealand dollar versus the US dollar coming through at neutral. Okay, you can see quite a few positive changes here fundamentally. COT is still -2. Japanese yen pairs still coming through neutral across the board. Except for Kiwi yen, which is still showing a buy. Taking a look at the charts, if we start with, let's start with the first one, Aussie USD. All right, breaking this down. So currently looking at Aussie USD coming through neutral. If you look at the chart right now, you'll agree that we spoke about this earlier this week. We broke this trend when price broke resistance and resistance became support. Then yesterday we said, okay, look at how price came down and closed that support, came up and closed that resistance. And I still said to you guys, if you're going to take a trade, make sure you verify it lower time frame. You didn't get the lower low, lower high, so you did not do any selling yesterday. Yesterday, our fundamental bias was still bearish. In terms of where we are today, as you can see, price closed yesterday, closed high. We got all this resistance up here. Price hasn't really closed at any kind of resistance. Okay, you look at a 4-hour time frame, you can see we are currently at weekly targets. The next real resistance coming up would be the central and the 55. Okay, we have to see how today's candle closes, because this candle yesterday not really closing at any significant resistance. Taking a look at the 4-hour time frame, you can see we arrived at the profit taking zone yesterday, and we had this resistance over here, but you wouldn't have had any lower low, lower high. We'll take a look at that in a moment. So no reason to be selling the Aussie USD yet. Currently at a profit-taking zone. Okay, so we know what that means. It's the place where bulls take profit. Looking at this chart right now, we can see that we've certainly, from a bearish perspective, we've stopped making lower lows and lower highs. Okay. From a bullish perspective, currently out of position. If we take a look at the H1 time frame, you can see we haven't got any lower lows and lower highs to speak of. Now, if we go back to yesterday's time frame, yesterday's chart, when we met up at London, we were sort of over here somewhere, right? We're still saying in order for this to set up for bearishness, we need that lower low, lower high. We did not get it. Also out of position for a buy. Okay, so price going up, you can see no lower lows, lower highs, nothing indicating a sell. So I'm waiting from the daily perspective. I'm waiting for the daily to close at resistance and then take that down to each time frame and identify potential bearishness. Bearishness insofar as a lower low, lower high is concerned. Now, because of the fact that fundamentals are currently neutral on the Aussie dollar USD, I'm sitting back and waiting. Didn't buy any of this because the fundamental bias was bearish. Although you can see justification for buying. For example, price closing at supports at the close of the 24th. So on the 25th, going into the market, that's when price was coming up off of the weekly M2. And that's starting off by price closing at support on the daily time frame. Again, the fundamental bias was bearish, so there was no buying. We weren't looking to do any buying. We're following our fundamental bias. Now fundamentals are currently neutral. So I want to see how that changes during the course of today, and see if we are presented with any opportunity up here, lower low, lower high, that gives us the chance to sell. If you're looking at this from a pure technical perspective, and you're not worried about the fundamentals, well, you know that you're currently at a profit-taking zone, and you're paying attention to any candle that gives you an indication of price closing at resistance. Looking at this 4-hour candle over here, you can see we haven't really closed any kind of roll reversal. We got the top of the range over here. Well, this range over here, you can see price topping out there. So linking that to the right-hand side, you can see there is some areas which were resistant in the past. However, not roll reversals, okay? So this over here, if you look at the volatility of this, are you currently trending or ranging? Well, right now, you'd say, well, let's follow the story. So this being a higher low to this, higher high, higher low. Let's call this entire thing a higher high. So currently, in order to sell this, you need a lower low, lower high. Okay. Be that on the 4-hour or the H1. Personally, I would wait for the H4, lower low, lower high, give me an indication it's time to sell. But because we got that neutrality in fundamentals, I'm sitting back and saying, let me pay attention to this and just see how fundamentals are changing. What changes first? For this to go from bearish to bullish, does technicals change first, or do fundamentals change first? We're going to pay attention to that over the coming days. In terms of euro dollar, we can see here, again, euro dollar coming through neutral on the QuantBox. So looking at this, we can see, okay, we definitely broke that bearish. Remember, we spoke about how the lower low, lower high, no lower low. Okay, ranging over here. Now suddenly prices come up much higher, breaking that 55. Looking at the daily candle, yesterday's close, have we closed at resistance? First and foremost, what volatility are we dealing with? Are we dealing with a trend? Are we dealing with a range? Well, as you can see, we've now broken above this high over here. We haven't made a higher low yet. Okay. Currently, price not closing at any specific resistance on the daily time frame. If you take a look at the H4 time frame, you can see here we are way above the profit-taking zone, and we've got an ECB meeting today. Okay, so you know for a fact you aren't buying up here. If you were looking to sell, you need a lower low, lower high somewhere. Okay, so that might be on the H1 time frame. Okay, let's just first look at H4 to see in terms of our 4-hour candle. Notice how our 4-hour candle is a red candle, not closing at resistance. You can see there's a range inside there. Look at how price got a range there. If you look at this red candle, look how it's closing at the bottom of that range. Okay. Looking at the H1 chart, you can see that it's the same story. Price currently sitting at the bottom of this range. Okay. And if you take a look at the M15 charts, you can see here you've got no lower low, lower high. Notice how prices come down to the 55. That predicts double top. Notice how prices failed to come back up and double top. Ideally, what you're looking for is price to come down, break the 55, come up, double top, come down, lower low, come back up, lower high. That has not happened. When that doesn't happen, you look at the chart and say, the rules of my methodology are not making sense on this time frame. That doesn't mean that your rules are wrong. It means that this is a trade that you would not take because it's not in line with your methodology. It's that discipline and patience we speak about. You can continue paying attention to this and looking for opportunities to sell. Ultimately, I would first wait for price to close at resistance on the H4 time frame. So if price came down, lower low, came back up, closed at resistance or double top, whatever the case may be, just in terms of candles. I'm referring to price right now, not market. I'm not saying price comes down, breaks the 55, comes back up and double tops, because that wouldn't take a couple of sessions, just in terms of price action, right? So you look at this and say, well, what's the volatility right now? Price is currently ranging. So how would I trade a range? Well, if price comes up and closes at the top of the range, well, that's resistance, right? So if I get a green candle closing top of the range, that's the first step. Further to that, if I can then look at a lower time frame chart on the H1 time frame in terms of bearishness, as long as price hasn't broken resistance and resistance has not become support, price is not above the H4 wick that closes at resistance, and price hasn't closed at support, well, then I feel pretty confident about my bearishness. However, further confirm that you're bearish by looking for that lower low, lower high on the M15 time frame, keeping in mind that right now, fundamentals are neutral, waiting for that ECB decision today. Furthermore, in terms of pound dollar also coming through neutral, you look at the daily time frame, you can say, well, has price closed at resistance? I don't see any resistance left-hand side. Price above the 55. We probably have a moving average over here in terms of the 100. Let's take a look at that. Okay, it's just above price at the moment. Okay, so looking at this, I don't have price closing at resistance on the daily. On the H4, again, I've got that profit-taking zone, which is great, cool. So from a pivot point perspective, currently at a place where I could look for a counter-trend trading opportunity, but I'd need to absolutely confirm that I've got that lower low, lower high, okay? Looking at volatility on the 4-hour, you can see currently ranging. Looking at the 4-hour candle, not closing at resistance. So therefore, waiting for price to close at resistance, top of the range, and then sort of following that down in the following candles, right? You can see there's the H1 range, okay? Now, ranges are easy because all you're looking for is a break, pull back, and you sell. So if you're looking, whatever time frame you're looking at, you get a lower low, lower high here, you've got a green light, okay? Now, you might decide that you're using your 4-hour in terms of just, well, I'm at the profit-taking zone, so I'll pay attention to M15. Or you could wait for the 4-hour candle to close top of the range, then look at your H1 chart, verify bearishness by saying, has price broken resistance? Has resistance become support? Has price closed at support? If none of those things have happened, and also price hasn't broken above the wick of the 4-hour candle closing at resistance, if none of those things have happened, then you can at least confirm bearishness on H1. But again, looking for that lower low, lower high M15 is definitely going to pay off. Okay. So keeping an eye on what's going on here with regards to pound dollar. Again, reminding yourself that at the moment, you've got neutrality in terms of fundamental bias on QuantBox. Kiwi dollar, also neutral. All right. So looking at this chart, we haven't looked at Kiwi dollar in a while. Reason being is because we've had neutrality for quite some time. So looking at the Kiwi dollar right now, you can see currently coming up, we've got a 55 and an M3 just above us. Okay. So from that perspective, also we got complements of the monthly M3 with the profit taking zone. Okay. And currently we've got no price in the daily. Price has not closed at resistance on the daily. So you'd actually be waiting for, I think on all of these pairs, paying attention to the daily time frame and identifying the fact that price hasn't closed at resistance on the daily is a very interesting point to take note of. However, because you got those profit taking zones on the H4 time frame, you certainly could be looking for lower lows, lower highs. Why not? You are currently at a place where bulls could take profit. So looking at the H1 chart, you can see here, first of all, H4 not closing any kind of resistance, profit taking zone above here. And, you can see on the M15, no lower lows, lower highs, not even setting up for lower lows, lower highs. Okay. So really, really easy way to just identify the fact that you're either trading or you aren't based on that price action. Looking at USD CAD, still indicating a buy. You can see here, I still have no appetite to be buying up here because price is so far out of position. In terms of the H4 time frame, looking at weekly pivot points, you can see we are currently down here near a profit taking zone. But again, do we have a higher high, higher low? So looking at the H1 time frame, I do not see any higher highs, higher lows. Looking at M15, no higher highs, higher lows. So you could be paying attention to that and simply looking for that higher high, higher low with an indication that you'd like to buy. Keep in mind, though, that because you're out of position on the daily, you would not be looking for long-term trading. So you'll be taking profit at either a weekly central or at your daily profit-taking zone. Right, so that covers our dollar pairs. In terms of the yen pairs, because we've had neutrality on these yen pairs for so long fundamentally, I'm going to leave the yen pairs out. You can see lots of whipsaws, lots of stuff going on here. I'm waiting for some fundamental change with regards to the yen pairs. I'm going to leave those out of my analysis today. So there's enough to focus on in terms of the dollar pairs, plenty to focus on. But remember, team, price must be at resistance. And I do agree, a profit-taking zone is an area where profit-taking can take place. But definitely verify everything on an M15 chart with a lower low, lower high. If you do that, you can see here yesterday, no reason to trade, no reason to trade, no reason to trade. And it'll be very easy to observe a lower low, lower high in these market conditions because it'll be completely opposite of what you've been seeing so far. Stay vigilant, stay disciplined, stay patient, and stay liquid. Have a good day. See you tomorrow.